Well, hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. We're really excited to discuss this topic with you. This is Prosecutorial Misconduct Town Hall. My name is Steph Pettit. I'm a 2L at Brooklyn Law School.
And I'm Bianca Lee. I'm also a 2L at Brooklyn Law School. Today, we have three amazing speakers for this panel tonight. So I'll read a little bit about each of them before we get started. Derek Hamilton spent over 2 decades in prison for a murder he did not commit. In 2015, he was exonerated and is the co-founder of Family and Friends of the Wrongfully Convicted, a 501c3 organization dedicated to freeing the innocent. Roger Clark is formerly incarcerated and is currently a leader of the Civil Rights Union at Vocal, New York. He is also a fellow at Columbia University and is currently attending college. Cynthia Godso is a professor at Brooklyn Law School, where she writes about and teaches courses in family law, criminal law, children in the law, professional responsibility, and sex crimes. Before joining the faculty, Professor Godso was a public defender for children and youth at the Legal Aid Society. She is a member of Accountability New York, a group dedicated to addressing prosecutorial misconduct, has trained both prosecutors and public defenders on juvenile justice issues, and participates in pro bono work on a variety of family law and criminal law issues. So thank you all so much for being here. And before we begin, we'd also like to take some time now to thank our co-sponsors, the Civil Rights Corps, Vocal New York, and Brooklyn Law School.
Thank you. So just before we get started, the highlight of this panel is going to be the speakers that we have today. I just wanted to share some statistical background on the issue in order to frame today's discussion. So briefly, a recent national study of 2,400 exonerations found that almost a third of them included prosecutorial misconduct. The Death Penalty Information Center identified more than 550 cases nationwide in which a capital conviction or death sentence was overturned as a result of prosecutorial misconduct. The National Registry of Exonerations issued a 2020 report examining the consequences of prosecutorial misconduct, in particular exoneration cases. The report found that prosecutors who committed misconduct in criminal cases that led to exonerations were rarely disciplined. In fact, it happened only 4% of the time. And lastly, a 2013 report from the Center for Prosecutor Integrity identified 3,625 cases of prosecutorial misconduct between 1963 and 2013. Of those, only 63 prosecutors, less than 2%, were ever publicly disciplined.
Sure.
All right, so now we're going to focus on asking questions to the panelists. So we are asking folks if you have questions for the panelists at any point. There's a Q&A function in the bottom of your screen. Please use that for the questions because we will be able to select them and we will be asking them at the end of the program. So thank you so much for doing that. Also, because we have a limited amount of time tonight, we'd like to keep each question to about 15 minutes per question, just so you know. And we'll probably turn it over to question and answer at about 6:50 p.m. And we'll have about 30 minutes for question and answer.
So just a quick note about the Q&A. So for people who are in attendance today, if you submit a question to the Q&A, they will be visible to us and the panelists, but they won't be visible to the other attendees of the panel. So we will sort of see all the questions that are submitted, but everybody who's in attendance won't be able to see them. So if all of that sounds good, I think we can move into the first question we have for our panelists today, which is really just how do you see the problem of prosecutorial misconduct? And I don't know if we want to go, Derek, Roger, Professor Godso, or any order. You can decide amongst yourselves.
Well, I'll start it. I see the problem of prosecutor misconduct as being egregious. I see it being as something that's not regulated enough. I see it being as unchecked. The prosecutor is the most powerful person in the county. They have all of the power. They have, all the control. So if you get an unfair prosecutor, a prosecutor that's doesn't have justice and fairness and candor at the top of his agenda, then you have an office that's running rampant. If you got a fair prosecutor, on the other hand, who's following all the best practices and doing things in accordance to ethics and proper protocol, then you got a good prosecutor. But how do we know? We know based on statistics, right? We know based on the evidence that we use Brooklyn, for example, that there's been many wrongful convictions coming out of Brooklyn. And Ken Thompson and Eric Gonzalez has been courageous enough to admit to these things. They're admitting that prosecutor misconduct is a big problem in this borough. But we need to know this in every county, in every borough, because the statistics doesn't lie, right? And why aren't some of these people in jail, right? When they allow police officers to bring false witnesses in over and over and over again to send innocent men and women to prison. Why are they not sent to prison, right? I believe that anything left unchecked in our society is abusive to the people in which they serve. And prosecutors are not checked at all. They get wrongful conviction after wrongful conviction. They get overturned over and over by the appellate courts, and nothing happens to them. In any other profession, right? If you commit these type of malfeasance, these type of ethical violations over and over again, you're fired. Why not in the prosecutor's office? So I think it is egregious. I think it's affecting communities, it's affecting people's lives, and these human beings we're talking about. And we need to put checks and balances to hold them accountable.
I'll go next. I believe that prosecutors, especially the bad ones, they should be there should be more checks and balances. If anybody who has the power to take away your life or to send you to jail for the remainder of your life, there should be more oversight, not less. And in this case, we have prosecutors working in each counties. You got the top prosecutors, and then you have assistant district attorneys, and some of them who are doing basically what they want. There is too many individuals in jail with wrongful convictions who are actually innocent of the crime, and only 10, 15, 20 years later, you figure out that no, they did not commit the crime. And the prosecutor, she still have her salary, he or her, they still have the prestige of going to colleges and university teaching law, and the individual who they convicted wrongfully, his life is a mess. You know, I was wrongfully convicted when I was 20 years old. I was arrested of a shooting that I did not commit, and I was coerced into taking a plea. You know, I was going through hell at that time at the facilities that I was in, and my attorney wasn't giving me no information. He wasn't appearing in court, and when he did appear, the only thing he seemed to be talking about is that if you don't take this plea, you're gonna get 8 1/3 to 25. And as a 20-year-old, I just couldn't do 8 1/3 to 25. I didn't commit the crime. The individuals who got, the one person who got shot, he was not cooperating with the district attorney. There was no way for them to find me guilty had I insisted of going to trial, but I ended up taking the plea because I was coerced to. I was pressured to take that plea. And to this day, that decision have ruined my life. You know, and prosecutors don't care as long as it's not their sons and daughters that is getting arrested. They really don't care about the consequence about what individuals do. They just run with whatever evidence they claim to have. And even decades later, when you try to remove the convictions, they tend to resist in a hostile and or fear manner. There shouldn't be there shouldn't be bad prosecutors. You know what I'm saying? There should not be individuals that has so much power, like Mr. Hamilton was saying, and there is no type of check. You cannot allow prosecutors to police themselves. There should be a separate entity that should be there, you know, to answer, to be able to put things into perspective, like whenever something go wrong, you know what I'm saying? Like you, like they said, like ain't no profession. Imagine having a job where anything you do is valid. Anything you do is not going to be no repercussions. You could do anything. You could say what you want. You could do whatever you want, and there isn't going to be no repercussion against you. That is not right. It's not good to have a job like that. We need to have standards in place to make sure that they don't do that, and they have a tendency of going after people of color at an alarming rate, even though it happened to a white and other individuals, but we bear the brunt of it. And it's just not right, you know. So I believe that is like one of the biggest prosecutor misconduct is one of the biggest shames that each county faces, you know what I'm saying? And the vast majority of law-abiding citizens, they are not aware of the misconduct that these prosecutors is doing, and we should do more to make sure that they are aware of what the prosecutors is doing. When they do something wrong, there should be consequences. And with that, I'll leave it at that.
Well, I just want, first of all, thank you so much to people for being here. I'm so glad. It's a really important issue that, like Mr. Hamilton, Mr. Clark said, is really under discussed and under known. But I just agree with everything they said, and they know, you know, better than anyone how it can ruin lives, ruin families, ruin communities. I just wanted to point out, like, we talk about police misconduct. And how it's not bad apples, like it's not a few individual people, it's like a structural problem. And the same is really true of prosecutorial misconduct. Again, it's not like, it's just the culture and structure of prosecution in most places that, you know, people get promoted on conviction rates without looking into what that means, that it's a win at all costs mentality. And in terms of ethics rules, which I know we're going to talk a little bit more about, you know, prosecutors are the only attorneys. So all attorneys have ethics rules, and prosecutors have a minister of justice rule. They're supposed to be delivering justice, not convictions. And it explicitly says that doesn't mean convictions. It certainly doesn't mean wrongful convictions, but it doesn't even mean convictions. And I think we need to, you know, really take a look at ourselves as a society, but also, you know, really be, well, I guess we'll get to this in further questions, but really be monitoring what's going on, because exactly like Mr. Hamilton, Mr. Clark said, like, this is a real problem. It's not, of course, it's not every prosecutor, it's not even every prosecutor's office, but it is all over the place, like Mr. Hamilton said, and it's just, it doesn't get enough attention in terms of how life-ruining it can be.
Thank you all for your very thoughtful answers to that question. So the next question that we have for the panelists is, what have each of you done, or what are you currently doing to address prosecutorial misconduct? Thank you.
I'll go first this time. There was an English jurist, William Blackstone. He said that it is best to let 10 guilty people go free than to convict one innocent individual. And that is certainly not what happened in New York State. But so what the Vocal New York team is doing right now is that we have a bill called the Challenging Wrongful Conviction Act, which will try to, it is not focused on holding prosecutors accountable, which there should be different components to the problem, because the problem is huge. But where we focus at is to allow the individuals who is convicted, he might be in a jail somewhere in upstate New York, or he might be out here in the street like me, you know, an opportunity, a second opportunity to go before a court, get all of the evidence that was used against him, and for him to be able to build the case to prove that he was innocent of the charges, or that you know, he was innocent from the beginning, and prosecutors didn't have a chance to think. So what do? in New York State, whenever you are convicted of a crime, whether if you take a plea or if you go to trial, you have a constitutional right for what is known as a direct appeal, and a direct appeal simply means everything that was stated in the courtroom that the stenographer recorded. That is what your argument have to be within what's in that stenographer writing. But there are issues that happen outside of that. Like, let's say if you went to trial and a prosecutor failed to give you what is known as exculpatory evidence that will help you prove that you did not commit the crime, then that is something outside the record. So you cannot file an appeal based on exculpatory evidence. You only could use what was said and done at the hearings and at the trials. So when you have outside evidence, what you got to do is you got to file what is known as criminal penal law 440.10, and that provision today, it is extremely old. It has a lot of challenges to it, and hardly nobody. There was a group of lawyers who studied it and figured out that hardly nobody ever got any relief through 440.10. Very little over the last 30 to 50 years. So what we want to do is we want to reinvent that provision, give individuals who is wrongfully convicted of a crime the opportunity to get access to a lawyer, because once you get convicted of a crime, and you file a 440.10, is not mandatory for you to get a lawyer. So you got individuals who are convicted of a crime, they have to go and learn the law and to be able to write a motion and go to court. And it's not right. Like, we should have a lawyer there, representing them at every stages. Also, you're not entitled to a hearing. It depends on if the judge feel like giving it to you. The Challenge and Wrongful Conviction Act will make it mandatory for them to give you a hearing. If you took a plea, there was a famous case in the New York State Court of Appeals. It's called People versus Tiger. And in that case, the prosecutor argued that even if you're innocent of the crime, and if you took a plea, that you should not be allowed to go to court and plead and state that you're innocent. And the New York State Court of Appeals agreed with the prosecutor, and so now we got a law on the books which other states, other state raised concern, like Illinois Supreme Court Justice. Their Supreme Court Justice said that is a big miscarriage of justice. How is it that we're living in a state where prosecutors is saying it doesn't matter if you're innocent or guilty, if you took a plea, they don't want you in court? You know what I'm saying? And this is what the Court of Appeals did back in 2018, and it's a wrong-headed decision, and it needs to end. So what the bill would do, it would give back individuals who took a plea, give them the right to go to court and present their case, because the Innocent Project had proved through DNA evidence that innocent people take pleas, and they take pleas for minor crime, and they take pleas for major crime, homicide, rape, some of the most serious crime. And the only reason why they got their conviction removed is because DNA proved that it wasn't them. So we know that innocent people take pleas. However, prosecutors try to make it look like they want the case to finish, that there should be finality, but the system is not fallible. The system is not correct. Like, there gotta be a second avenue for individuals to challenge their conviction. There should never be finality when you're dealing with individuals who are not the best persons, to convict you to begin with. Like, these people, some of them, they do it through hate. We know there was a case in Long Island. There was a prosecutor in Long Island who prosecuted a whole bunch of black kids for crime from homicide that they did not commit. I don't have his name right now, But yeah, and the only thing that happened to him is he got fired, and now he's a defense attorney working in the same court building. It should not be happening. We need to have systems in place to prevent prosecutors from ruining people's lives. So like I said, the challenging wrongful conviction will give you the right to hearing, the right to discovery, the right to DNA evidence if your case have DNA evidence, the right for you to plead if you have a plea, and it also have a whole bunch of other provisions in there that it will make it a lot better. But that is not all that. So we got that going. And the other thing that we got going is that we have CCA, Community Centers Alternative, who is trying to give New York a court, give us a court that we deserve, because no matter how much laws we put in place, we have justices in the New York State Court of Appeals. Mostly all of them are former district attorneys, and they are not in favor of the person accused of the crime. So we need to change that. We need to have a system that respect everybody, and not only do they rule against individuals who are accused of crime, but they rule against individuals, landlord and tenant. They always go in favor of the landlord instead of the tenant. They always go in favor of the employer instead of the employee. And they always rule against the small individuals. So there is a coalition now that is pushing the governor and elected officials to not give us judges who is just going to rubber stamp everything that prosecutors do. We need a strong court that is going to be fair and equitable to everybody. We don't want them in favor or against any party. So and there's other things that other laws that we're gonna have to come up with in order to try to end this process of prosecutor using false evidence to convict innocent individuals and then trying to bury them inside the system forever. Like whatever wrong that they did is gonna come to light sooner or later, because that's human being life that you destroy. So. Yeah. That's it. With that, I pass it to the next speaker.
As an advocate, what I try to do is protest against prosecutors who abuse their authority. I ask they be removed. I joined Vocal and other organizations, grassroots organizations, to go and protest outside of their offices, and ask for their removal. We filed grievances against them. We joined all kinds of coalitions to remove rogue prosecutors. I think that is our civic duty as human beings when we see a prosecutor doing something unethical or wrong to speak out against it. And I stand firm in that as an advocate for wrongfully convicted people. As a paralegal and a deputy director of a legal clinic, we litigate against prosecutorial misconduct. We challenge it in every asset of the case. If we see it, we point it out, and we communicate with the prosecutors. We call them, we pick up the phone and say, this is a pattern, or this is something that we've seen with this prosecutor several times, it must stop, right? We ring the alarm, and we litigate civilly, file civil rights suits when we can. But one of the biggest things that I do is I advocate on changing the 11th Amendment that gives the prosecutors absolute immunity, right? That protects them at all costs. Every chance that I get to come on a forum like this, I ask people to let's figure out what we can do to get rid of that amendment. Because whenever you say that the prosecutor can have more protections than the president of the United States, I got a problem with that. Right now, we're saying let's hold Donald Trump accountable, but we can't hold a prosecutor accountable that wrongfully convicted me or Roger or so many other men. I think that oxymoron in our society needs to be changed. So, my biggest asset, I think, is my voice and my ability to mobilize people to join me in the fight to change these things. And I'm going to continue to do that. I'm going to join fights like Roger have and support him or Vocal or any other organization that have a make sense bill to hold prosecutors accountable to make the criminal justice system more fairer. So that's what I've been doing for the last 11 years since I've been released. That's what I continue to do with organizations around the country. And more than other, we tell people to go out and vote to make sure that they elect prosecutors in their jurisdiction that runs on the bill to say they're going to be fair, and then hold them accountable to that when they get in office. I don't think there is any prosecutor in New York City that would say that I won't come out and protest against them if there's enough families and people that comes to my office and say that there's a problem. So we continue to fight against them to make it fair. We continue to get rid of the systemic racism that exists in all the prosecutors' offices around the country. Black people are being arrested. They're being convicted and prosecuted at a higher rate than anybody else, stopped by police officers, and they're just being abused. So we fight against that injustice every single day with every breath of our body.
Yeah, so I just really am building on the wisdom of, now I'm gonna call them Derek and Roger, just for easier, but like, so much wisdom here in terms of, just to highlight a few things in terms of voting. I mean, the DA, most DA elections are uncontested nationwide, like over 75%. And people talk about, presidential elections, but like actually for people in the community, like on the ground, the DA is the most important person, and particularly for people of color and marginalized communities. So pay attention, hold them accountable, like Derek and Roger said, through court watch, through other means, like, are they living up to what they said they were going to do? What is what they said they were going to do? Because many DAs don't even really have any kind of platform that they're running on. And again, looking at conviction rates as a measure is not telling us anything. It's like convictions of who, for what, like, is that keeping our communities safe? And coming back to, whether they're really doing justice, right? Justice does not mean conviction rates, certainly not convictions of innocent people, but even convictions of someone who might have done something like, is that really keeping the community safe? I want to take 1 minute to back up and talk about what we mean by prosecutorial misconduct. Because I know some of the last, it's a really low bar. Like, we're not even talking about, what I think ethically actually people should do if you're really talking about justice. We're talking about like not breaking basic constitutional rules. So for instance, there's a constitutional rule that you have to prosecutors have to turn over, evidence that might be exculpatory, that might show that someone else, committed the crime, or that the person who did it is innocent. Brady violation, that's a very common form of prosecutorial misconduct. Making arguments that are racially biased, striking jurors for racist reasons, lying to the court about witnesses or other things, putting on witnesses who are going to lie. All these things are, again, a really low bar. We're not even talking about really what I think, if you really are trying to be a minister of justice, would entail. Many people even breaking this with no accountability, as Roger and Derek said. Just wanted to add in that I'm part of a project that a bunch of other attorneys and law professors are part of, which is to try to bring disciplinary complaints against prosecutors, because just like Derek said, because there's immunity, which, I know there's efforts to change in New York, I think would be really good. Immunity meaning that you can't sue or in any way hold accountable. But the one thing that is, at least in theory, a possibility is that being an attorney is a privilege, and you have to, pass the bar and live up to certain standards. And attorneys are supposed to be disciplined, meaning like a suspension of their license or other kinds of discipline, or even losing their license for misconduct. And yet, very few prosecutors, I think 1 or 2, have ever been held accountable in New York. We don't really know what's going on for very egregious misconduct, and yet other attorneys for like very minor things are sometimes held accountable, and yet prosecutors who lie to the court have so this group filed complaints a year and a half ago against some, including some in Queens, who there were wrongfully convicted people who were released after 20 plus years in prison, lied to the court, didn't turn over evidence. We still don't know what's happening because the bar committee, it's complete black box. Like, we don't know. They're supposed to be regulating this, and we have no idea what's happening. But again, it's even that mechanism, which is supposed to hold attorneys more broadly accountable, doesn't do anything for prosecutors, at least as far as we know so far.
Thank you so much. So this is the last question that we sort of had for all of the panelists. And I think Mr. Clark, Mr. Hamilton, both of you already touched on this a little bit, but I think many people are here because they're curious, like what they can do as members of the public to address the problem of prosecutorial misconduct. So we just wanted to ask you if you wanted to build on what you said earlier or add anything additional What can the public do to address the problem of prosecutorial misconduct?
I would just say, again, get out and vote. If you see that the prosecutor in your neighborhood is wrongfully convicting people over and over, we had that in Brooklyn with Charles Hines, and we got out and removed him and put Ken Thompson in office, someone who came in and been fair and led New York on wrongful convictions. So I think that, again, don't sit around and allow systemic racism to go on in your county. Hold your public officials accountable. I think that's the biggest thing. I think it's the people who hold government officials accountable. And if we don't be involved, then by our silence, then we are actually supporting the abuse. So, say something, speak up, be held accountable. That's all I would say.
Yeah, I would say, I would echo what Derek Hamilton said, that one of the biggest thing that you could do is pay attention to the issues. I mean, whatever borough that you're in, like there is wrongdoing, although some prosecutors are trying to do right, but there is still a lot of wrong that is not being addressed. Like some prosecutors like to cherry pick what issues that they like to remove. You know what I'm saying? Like in Brooklyn, for instance, I see a lot of individuals who got the conviction reversed by either the judge, the trial judge, or the appellate division, and the prosecutor runs to the Court of Appeals because they know that they have a favorable court that is going to do their work and keep the individuals convicted. So one thing that you could do is pay attention to it's hard, like pay attention to who is running for district attorney and vote your conscience. You know what I'm saying? Another thing that you could do is you could join us to let legislators know, like, why is there an entity so powerful that allows that y'all are allowing prosecutors to ruin people's life? You know what I'm saying? Like whenever there's a law against prosecutors, they start saying that we just simply don't like them, and it's not the case. Like we want to have, if somebody does, if somebody break the rules, there should be consequences. But what I don't want is that is when you get these rogue prosecutors that decide to do it their way to manipulate evidence and convince a jury when the jury should actually not convict somebody who don't deserve it. So join us at Vocal. You could join us in our fight to get the challenge of wrongful conviction, another legislation that would make it easier for individuals to make it harder for prosecutors to convict individuals. Another thing is get into the fight. Like y'all gotta tweet, y'all gotta do whatever y'all gotta do to let the governor know that we need judges who is gonna be fair to everybody. They shouldn't be fair to the powerful and the elite. They should be fair to the small individuals like me and you. We right now, even though New York is a very democratic state, we have we have a huge opportunity for Kathy Hochul to elect somebody that is going to be fair and equitable to everybody. So push her for that. Make sure that she don't choose another person like the former like the chief judge, who basically went along with everything the district attorney said and crippled some of the constitutional rights that other states enjoy. Like there is most in other states, the Challenging Wrongful Conviction Act is stated in other states like Texas and North Carolina and South Carolina. These laws is already in place. Individuals could go the defense attorney could go to the police and get the evidence that they need. In New York State, they don't even want to give you the evidence. They They complained and said that it's too burdensome for them to give you evidence that you need, and it's wrong, So there's a lot of things that you could do. Talk to your prosecutor, let the prosecutor know. Let your prosecutor know that it is wrong to have rogue prosecutors in the office, and that's a problem, And with that, I allow somebody else to speak.
Well, so as before, I really agree with everything that Derek and Roger said, and how important it is for everyone in the community to be paying attention to this. Like, it definitely very much affects certain communities more than others. Like both of them have said, the system is very racially biased, definitely more harmful to low income people and all kinds of things. So we all need to be paying attention to it. A couple of points I wanted to follow up on, Roger had mentioned before, pleas. Yeah, we know that there's all kinds of reasons that people plead, just like Roger did, that have nothing to do with their guilt or innocence, have nothing to do with their harm to the community, and a big reason is bail. So I just want to say, even though this conversation is about prosecutorial accountability, where there's a lot of work to be done, there's just a lot of work to be done in the system in general. So bail, the fact that people are held pretrial when they're still innocent, like presumed innocent, and the fact that only people who are rich can bail their way out, that's a huge reason. Of course, people don't want to lose their job, they don't want to lose their kids, they don't want to be on Rikers, a horrible, dangerous place, for so many reasons, even before the pandemic. So, we need to also be thinking big picture, like, people, we need to be thinking, if you're really thinking about justice, then there shouldn't be a difference between low-income people and rich people. So, right. So, taking away that power for prosecutors to coerce people into pleas, which is just like easy. They don't have to prove anything. They don't even have to worry. So we need to think like big picture about that. I did also want to say, as someone who teaches law students and lots of wonderful law students and lawyers who want to be prosecutors, I think that's great. People ask me all the time, am I anti-prosecutor? No, I want to be clear that I think, this day, maybe in the long run, I want to get rid of the system altogether. But for now, this is what we have. And I think we really need good people who have a strong sense of real justice and want to have justice that's not just about conviction rates, et cetera, and want to be fair. Like, absolutely. So again, people who are interested in that as lawyers should go into that field and just be really, mindful, because it's so much power, as we've all been saying, and just to use that wisely. And just the lawyers as a whole, I think we have a lot of responsibility for the fact that we're not checking this. The whole community isn't, but lawyers in particular are supposed to be, disciplining ourselves. We're a self-regulating profession. It's a privilege to be a lawyer. And we're not doing that, right? Like, we're just letting prosecutors sort of run amok. As I mentioned, like, we filed these complaints, it's been 18 months and we have no idea what's happening. And again, these people still have their law licenses. They're still able to earn money and be like a higher status member of society. And it's sort of like, again, if you're gonna, have the privilege of being a lawyer, then really lawyers ourselves should be policing them as well. I don't want to use the policing, should be regulating prosecutors.
Great. Thank you all so much for your thoughts on these questions. And it's generated a lot of additional questions, can tell you that much. So we'll get started with the question and answer component of the program. So the first question we wanted to pose to you all comes with a little bit of background. So often the discipline that prosecutors do face comes from within the state itself, like state disciplinary committees or grievance committees within specific courtrooms. Do you think that this contributes to prosecutors not being held accountable because the ones who are supposed to hold them accountable are also on the side of the state?
Absolutely. I think you got to have independent people. You got to have people that doesn't have anything vested in not holding somebody accountable on those committees and boards. You can't have a bunch of previous prosecutors or judges on there because they're biased. They're their friends. They're people they probably grew up with and hung out with and did things with. So we need to get people from the community, common sense people, reasonable people, who have no vested dime in it one way or another. People who are going to be an impartial people. We need impartiality on these committees and boards. We need courageous people, people that understands the importance in holding prosecutors accountable. We're not looking to hold a prosecutor accountable that did no wrong, or we're not looking to abuse a prosecutor, but we need fair people. We need people with integrity on those committees, and people that's not looking to hide or protect the wrong of the prosecutor.
So I'll jump in. Sorry, again, 100% agree with Derek, and I do think, again, it's something that law students and lawyers need to really scrutinize themselves for, because so many of us are calling out police misconduct, which is really appropriate and needs to happen, and yet are overlooking it. And we talked about police violence. I mean, the violence that was committed upon Derek and Roger and so many other people by prosecutors, like, that's violence too. And just because it's like you're in a suit in the courtroom and not out on the street, like, that is not, it's not really different. In fact, in some ways, I think it's worse, because it's, you have more privilege and it's over a period of time, right? So one of the cases we filed a grievance against in Queens against 2 prosecutors who were supervisors, it was over a period of a year, where they repeatedly lied to court, didn't turn over evidence, right? So it's like many, many choices. So I think I absolutely agree. The bar, it's too insular. In Queens, for instance, many of the judges are former prosecutors. That's a problem even on the Supreme Court. Justice Sotomayor has talked about. Now we finally have a defense attorney on the court. The first one, Judge Jackson, the first one since Marshall. So there's just not a diversity of opinion. And so I absolutely agree. It needs to be an independent commission that, and prosecutors have been very resistant to this. They tried to set one up in New York, and they challenged it and everything, that absolutely needs to happen. And I guess I would just say, if prosecutors are confident that they're doing justice, if they're really doing their job, and again, no one knows everything, no one's, like I said, it's a little bit, we're not asking people to know everything or be perfect, but we're just asking them to comply with certain requirements. If they're confident in that, then they should be comfortable. It should be good to have oversight, because it can help you make sure that you're doing your job with all the information and without blind spots. And yet, again, we see a lot of resistance from most prosecutors in terms of oversight. Again, of course, not all. Like, I don't want to say it's everybody, but the institution of prosecution is very much like, this is our business and you have no right to look into it. And I think that's very, very, very wrong.
Yeah, I agree with what both speakers said. Yes, we do need an entity that is going to be neutral to all parties, but that will be able to have the power to, because if they don't have no teeth, then what's the purpose? Like, we shouldn't just have prosecutors as judges. Like, New York State has civil rights lawyers, we have immigration lawyers, we have divorce lawyers, we have lawyers for every other thing. Like, but for some reason, they tend to focus on former prosecutors. We have defense lawyers that a lot of great individuals who should be not only in a court but be a part of any type of entity that will hold these prosecutors accountable. Because if you just put the same old individuals in those spaces, the same thing that's happening now is going to happen. Like, you got individuals, like I said, that is fighting for their life, and they really need relief. Like, I've seen some real miscarriages of justice. Not only my kids, there's a whole bunch of them out there, John Juka, and some of the other ones that are fighting, bringing new 440.10, and the prosecutor is fighting tooth and nail to keep those individuals in place. Like, why should it be hard if you did something wrong for you to give an individual a new trial? You know what I'm saying? If you messed up, just say I messed up. I remember a case where a federal judge in Brooklyn had to get on the prosecutor's thing. Once the judge started complaining that is a wrong and that is a violation of law, once the judge said it, then the prosecutor said, oh, yes, it is a violation of law. But for years before, they didn't agree that was a violation of law. The judge had to get in. He really scolded the prosecutor. She really scolded the prosecutor, telling her, nah, you cannot be doing this. You know what I'm saying? And the only reason why you say now is because I'm complaining. They should be able to look at a case and see the misconduct, and for them to actually be the one to remove it instead of it going to a judge and having a judge tell him that no, that's wrong. And that's the case, like the professor said, like prosecutors is not there, like their job shouldn't be to get conviction. Their job is to make sure that justice occurs. If justice required for somebody to have to not be convicted of a crime, then the prosecutor should do that, not convict the person of a crime. You don't just convict, they're going to do everything in their power to get the person convicted and put them through hell. Like, we need to have there is a lot that needs to be done. With that, I stop.
Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts. So we've had a few questions that I think sort of center around like prosecutorial abuse of power and just the power that the institution of prosecution affords to individual prosecutors. People were mentioning the concerns that prosecutors can lie, prosecutors are prone to manipulation or coercion. And so people were sort of wondering, like, first of all, why are these methods sort of allowed? And also what can be done, if anything can be done in your view, to sort of prevent this sort of conduct or abuse of power from happening in the first place? Would you support or encourage like more holistic training methods, maybe consultations with social workers or clinicians, and more broadly, like, is there a way to make prosecution more holistic and humane in order to prevent the abuses of power that occur from happening in the first place?
Yeah, well, I would start on this one. I don't think that there is a one size fit all. I believe that that yes, we do need to speak to those individuals like y'all who are in law school, and some of y'all who are going to land in the district attorney's office, and speak to y'all, especially those of us that is wrongfully convicted, to let y'all know that, listen, prosecutors put us through this, that, like, make sure and to explain to y'all like what is wrong and what is right, to try to give y'all a good conscience that when you go in and you see something wrong and your boss is telling you, no, I want that conviction no matter what, for you to have the courage to step aside and say no, and go public and say, no, I'm not doing that. Like, what you asking me to do, but it's my opinion that he's not innocent. And if you got to go to the Daily News or to somewhere else and lose your job, to be courageous enough to stand up to your boss and tell him, like, no, I'm not doing that. That would be great. Also, what needs to happen is there is a lot of law that needs to be passed, like to hold prosecutors accountable regardless of the year that they did it. Like, these prosecutors take 20, 30 years out of somebody's life, and then by the time the person is removed, now the statute of limitation passed. There's nothing that could be done to hold the prosecutors accountable. There should be things in the law, because I understand if it's a mistake, but in most cases, it is a deliberate act that some prosecutors are doing. They are deliberately not withholding evidence. They are deliberately giving witnesses the wrong information, lies, allowing them to give lies at trial, and knowing that they're going to put somebody is going to be convicted of the crime and go to jail for X amount of time. So there is other things too. That I'm sure that if a group of lawyers and formerly incarcerated individuals sit down at a table, we could find a lot of things that a lot of laws that could be passed to try to prevent prosecutors from getting away with wrongfully convicting individuals.
Yeah, so just to jump in, first of all, I really love that Roger used the word courage, because I agree. And again, like I said before about students or other people who want to go into prosecution, and including people who are already prosecutors, like, there are many, many well-meaning great people, but like I said before, it's like the system is set up, or at least historically has been. If you're only promoting people based on convictions, it's set up for people to take shortcuts and win at all costs. I do think it's not a perfect solution, but Derek mentioned, from Brooklyn, Ken Thompson, who's probably the first sort of progressive prosecutor in the country, although he wasn't, called that then, but and Eric Gonzalez, like we have, prosecutors who are increasingly issuing policies that regulate their own offices, so who are not promoting just based on conviction, who are having certain rules about pleas and the maximum penalties you can, so I think that is another way too. It'd be best to have an independent oversight, but like Roger and Derek have said, the courts are not that great about it, legislatures too, and so individual prosecutors should be doing that, right? Like the lead prosecutors should be doing that. If they really want to have justice, then they have right now the law is all in their favor. They're allowed to do so much because, as the two said, like the law is not favorable to them. And so I think it really takes courage, and it's really the right thing for someone who wants to do justice, right? Like you want to do justice for the community, then they should not take the low-hanging fruit. You can pressure, people who are on Rikers to take a plea, even if they're innocent, or even if they could have a win at trial, because it's a terrible place to be. And unsafe, and you're being harmed. So I think it's really also something that a really good prosecutor who wants to do justice, which a lot of them do, but that's what they should, that's what the move should be. I just wanted to briefly on that note say we have so many wonderful questions, and this is only one of them, and actually kind of an outlier, but people saying we need to have, to be fair, we should have a prosecutor on the panel. I don't really agree. I mean, first of all, because prosecutors have a lot of panels and stuff that they can talk about, but I also don't think we're saying anything like, as we've all said, we're not actually anti-prosecutor per se. We're talking about prosecutorial misconduct, first of all, so like ethical misconduct that has been found to be unethical. But second of all, talking about like if people really want to meet their ethical obligation of doing justice, what should happen. So I don't think it's not like an us versus them. It's just like the system has been set up a certain way with all the advantages to one side. But again, if that side really wants to do justice, like there's lots of ways, and there are prosecutors who are doing that, and that's great. It just needs to be more, and in more places.
Okay, unless anyone has more thoughts on that question, we'll move to the next one. All right, so this one might require a little bit of background for anyone who's willing to share. So we have a question about what impact have the recently enacted discovery reform laws had on the prevalence of prosecutorial misconduct. And again, if anyone could provide, if you'd like to provide any background on what that discovery reform looks like before we dive into answering the question, we'd really appreciate it. Thank you.
Well, I can add to that and say that the new discovery laws allow defense counsels to have information before a person pleads guilty or decide whether or not they should take the plea. So now they can have all of the evidence. They can have the documents. They can have an intelligent conversation with their client on how they should move forward. So it has helped a lot, but I think that if there was open file discovery, it would be a lot better, right? It wouldn't be on the prosecutors, just, have to turn it over within a certain amount of time. I think the defense counsel and the prosecutor should equally have access to this evidence. And, I think it would be better, but I think we are moving in the step of the right direction, because there's compliance laws. If the prosecutor don't comply with giving the discovery over in a certain amount of time, there's certain sanctions that can be done against them. But I think it has helped. It has improved way beyond what it used to be, but there's still work to be done on it, personally.
Yeah, I would just 100% agree with Derek, and just to connect it to what we were all talking about a minute ago, it's like a lot of offices have been doing it. Like Seattle's been doing it for 20 years, and they, like it's only been good. And again, if you want to be doing justice and get the right result, like there's no downside to it. Like, why would you not want to be open? I will say, and again, this is not individual prosecutors necessarily, but the Prosecutor Association in New York, which has consistently resisted and frankly spread misinformation about any reforms, has said like, oh, it's going to be dangerous and all stuff. And again, I would go back to the Minister of Justice. If you really want justice, why would you not want to give over information so that exactly like Derek said, people have all the information, because otherwise they don't know what the prosecutor has. Prosecutors are allowed to do other things, as Derek and Roger has said. It just seems like good prosecutors who want to achieve justice should have no problem with open discovery.
Yeah. I do agree that open discovery should be, like when I was speaking up to North and South Carolina, that's what I meant, that they got open discovery. The defense attorney, he could go directly to the police department and get the evidence that they have on hand instead of waiting for the prosecutor to give it to them. So that's definitely helped. Before the year 2000 and way before my case, what happened in the 1990s is that you were reconciling, you didn't know what evidence a prosecutor claimed that they had against you, and you either take the plea or you gamble with your life. And you know what I'm saying? Like, and even in the individual who is innocent, they're like, damn, you know, how could prosecutors arrest me? What evidence are they relying on for them to arrest me? And there might be none, but we just didn't have that evidence. I think that it came came a long way to be able to get evidence, you know what I'm saying, discovery, which is extremely crucial. That you need to know that, you know what I'm saying. But and again, like some of these individuals who are getting arrested, some of them may have a 5th or 6th grade level, and some of them may be extremely intelligent and not fully understand the science of law. So but at least if they have the evidence, they'll be able to go to the library, and they will be able to educate themselves, you know what I'm saying, like the way most of us do, and they'll be able to help with their lawyer, like create the best defense possible for them to be able to challenge it at a trial instead of running to take a plea, because 90-something% of cases get pleaded out. And you know, like even individuals who was innocent. So I believe that this came a long way, like to help a lot of individuals not just take a plea, but to challenge the prosecutor's case. So it definitely is in the right direction.
Great. So we have been sort of talking, I think, about the different responsibilities that everyone in a courtroom has: prosecutors, defense counsel, judges. And, you know, while it's like very clear that prosecutorial misconduct is a huge driver of wrongful convictions, some folks are wondering about what responsibility, if any, should be assigned to the other people in the courtroom, to defense attorneys or judges, for wrongful convictions.
I think the judge primarily should be held accountable even more than the prosecutor. Judges have a role in making sure that trials are conducted in a fair and honorable manner. And a lot of times judges put blindfolders on, a lot of prosecutors do what they want or make rulings in favor of the prosecutor to convict. So, you know, I think that, again, the 11th Amendment gives judges absolute immunity. I think that should change. I think judges should be held just as accountable as prosecutors. I think that's a whole nother conversation when you talk about accountability. You know, I believe that whenever you have a pro-prosecutor judge and a prosecutor, you have two people against a criminal defendant, and hear another win, right? It should never be that unfair in a criminal trial, right, where a defendant has to fight against a judge and a prosecutor in order to get justice. Judges are complicit a lot of times. They're very complicit. You don't have a wrongful conviction without a judge having a role in it. It's just that simple. And then most defendants file post-conviction motions after their conviction, and they highlight the problem to the judges over and over and over again, and judges ignore it. In my case, I filed several post-conviction motions. You know, it wasn't until the appellate division mandated that I get an evidentiary hearing on the claim of actual innocence that I was able to be in a conversation of being exonerated. So I think that in the courtroom, it is a judge courtroom, right? It's a reason why the judge sits at the highest level of that courtroom. And it's a reason why he gives decisions when there's objections or when there's pretrial rulings that need to be done. And if judge gives bad rulings and set the temper that it can be unfair and it's permissible in this courtroom, then prosecutors run all over that. Judges have to hold prosecutors accountable. They should be the first one that refer a prosecutor to a grievance department that said he did something wrong, or he lied in my court, or he's continually to do this type of conduct. So I think that judges are at the top of the list for me. And I think defense counsels who stand by and acquiesce and don't complain and don't file grievances against their fellow prosecutors or attorneys who violates ethical rules and obligations should also be held accountable. I think everybody as an officer of the court has a role in improving the criminal justice system. All of them, all of us have a role, right? And I think the defendant should be the first one to raise the alarm. He should yell and scream that his rights are being violated so advocates like us can help. But I think everybody in the courtroom is held accountable to some degree.
I agree with everything Derek Hamilton stated. We used to have a saying when we was on reconciling that we going up against two brothers and a cousin. Now, the prosecutor and the judge are brothers and your lawyer is their cousin, you know, because, and not to put bad, because now that I'm working, I realize that there is a lot, even when I was in jail, there is a lot of excellent defense attorneys out there who do everything in their power to keep their client from going to jail. But there is still some defense lawyers that don't do everything in their power and that sometimes act as an accessory to allowing the prosecutor to do whatever they do, and they would ask like even a conniving question that they know they're not going to get nowhere, to pretend like they're all doing something, you know. So I also put the onus on the court, because the judge knows the law, or he should know the law, and he should know when something is amok, you know. When I had a judge that when he looked at one of my thing, he was like, how the hell did this dude get convicted? But still, he didn't do nothing in his power to fix the conviction, you know what I'm saying? So if he seen that there is something wrong, he could have took it up on the court, you know what I'm saying, and say, you know what, this is wrong, I'm gonna do it. So that's why, like, you know, when I appealed it, like, he was like, no, I want you to appeal it, because he knows, you know, sometimes judges are, especially like during the time that that certain mayors was involved, like Mayor Giuliani, like these dudes, Giuliani was blasting them, and if they did anything that he didn't like, he would move them around, send them to civil court, or sometimes just take them off the bench. So sometimes to keep their job, they would just go along to get along, you know, and that's not right neither. Like sometimes you got to call it how it is. If you're a person of morals, some values, if somebody is in jail before you and they're wrongfully convicted of a crime, you're supposed to say so, no matter if the governor or the president of the United States get mad at you. You know what I'm saying? So yeah.
So again, I just couldn't agree more, and thank you for the wisdom, Derek and Roger. Definitely judges, a huge problem. I do think though, going back to the pleas and the 90+% that these guys have referenced, I mean, when that happens, there's very little oversight, and judges just have very crowded dockets. They, you know, should be doing more, but it still really comes down to who has the power, and it's really the prosecutors in terms of charging. Definitely, of course, defense attorneys are sometimes culpable in it. Although, again, when it comes down to it, in terms of misconduct, defense attorneys have actually been disciplined for misconduct, like line courts that prosecutors do and have not been disciplined for. And prosecutors again have much more power, right? And I just want to return also to prosecutors are the only attorneys who have a specific mandate to do justice. Other attorneys do not, because they're supposed to zealously represent their clients. That doesn't mean that they're allowed to, you know, do whatever and lie and stuff, but they still have a client. Prosecutor's client is supposed to be the public and society and doing justice. So they have a higher ethical mandate than other attorneys, which is why it's particularly problematic that they are disciplined less and are less accountable than other attorneys for doing things, because they don't even have a client that they're representing. They're supposed to be doing justice. So again, I don't think, of course, we want to address the role of judges and defense attorneys too, But I think it's a distraction to say, like, the biggest problem, there's a lot of problems, as we all know, but the biggest problem right now in terms of wrongful convictions and just unfair trials of even, prosecutorial abuse of people who may have done something, but is prosecutorial misconduct, because they have the most power, especially in a system where almost everybody bleeds.
Thank you all again for such thoughtful answers. So we were thinking we could probably ask at least one more question to the panelists. We'll ask this one and then see if we have any extra time, if y'all are still up for it. I appreciate how much you've already given to us tonight. So this question kind of comes from an amalgamation of a few questions, kind of asking about remedies that people might be able to seek through bringing cases against prosecutors for prosecutorial misconduct. So just to synthesize some of those questions, a couple of folks are wondering if the legislature could pass laws or what your thoughts are on if the legislature might pass laws which criminalize prosecutors for misconduct, maybe grading it, intentional reckless negligence level of mens rea. And then we have also some ideas about if the legislator might be able to allow someone who has criminal status to potentially file a tort claim against prosecutors, kind of in a similar vein. And then the third question, I apologize if this is a lot, but of course, to what degree does qualified immunity kind of, affect these kinds of claims that we're talking about, or just any kind of challenge to prosecutorial misconduct?
Yeah, I'll go first. That was a lot to take in, so I'm trying to create my response. For the first one, if I remember correctly, the legislator does need to change the law with the qualified immunity law, which is a law that also we're fighting, because once you take away that immunity power, that's also another way of holding them accountable. You know what I'm saying? You got to take out the qualified immunity. And yes, there should be cases, especially egregious cases of individuals who haven't got their conviction removed, because the way the law works today is that you could only go to court if your conviction is removed. You know what I'm saying? So if you were able to go to court and to prove to a civil courtroom that the prosecutor violated your right to get in the conviction, that would be an excellent idea, in my opinion. You know what I'm saying? I remember a case when I was still locked up, where the individuals who was formerly incarcerated, he sued, he got his conviction reversed, and he sued the prosecutor in a personal capacity, and and the prosecutor said, no, you can't sue me, I got immunity. It was a case, I believe, out of Utah, and the Supreme Court took the case. This was around in the year 2000 and something, and the court, 2005, 2006, somewhere within that line period, and the court and the Supreme Court took the case, and the prosecutors were so afraid because of the question that the judge was asking them, that they believed that they would open up a can of worms, that they decided to give the individual like $2, $3, $4 million just for the court not to rule on the case, because they know that there was a good chance that the Supreme Court, that's another entity that could tear apart that immunity from them. So they paid an enormous ransom to get the case off of the Supreme Court. You know what I'm saying? In order for them to keep their immunity, because if the Supreme Court would have took away that immunity, then everybody would have been able to sue them who got the conviction reversed on their personal capacity. Yeah, and another thing that needs to happen, they need to be that if there is cases of deliberate indifference, that where they deliberately knew that the person was innocent, and they ignored all of the evidence, and they just, they put somebody to say lies to convict them, and once the conviction got removed, yeah, they should be able to pay out of their pocket instead of having the state and taxpayer pay for whatever crimes or misconduct that they did. You know what I'm saying? That those provisions also would keep prosecutors at bay and not hopefully at least some of them in not misbehaving, because like there should be no reason why prosecutors should be doing that. Like I said, I'm not against prosecutors, but I'm against people who do wrong to individuals. It is wrong to put a conviction on somebody. You don't have to convict them, let them go. You know what I'm saying? Don't get the conviction just to brag that you got conviction and ruin the individual life. Yeah.
For me, it goes back to what we already said before about accountability. And, one of the things I would say is what can be done? Training. Prosecutors should be trained that you're not getting rewarded for the convictions you get, right? You get rewarded for justice, right? You get rewarded knowing that you played within the rules of the criminality, the criminal justice system, and you won, not winning at all costs, right? When prosecutors are reversed for misconduct, then they should be demoted. They should be removed from trial assistance and moved to another area, right? You shouldn't say, oh, good job done when a prosecutor convicted somebody illegally or unconstitutionally over and over again, right? I think that whenever you see abuses in prosecutor's office, they should be removed, right? And there should be some type of incentive to other prosecutors to identify these guys. Right now, it's like the blue wall of silence, right? In the prosecutor's office, all of them protect each other, right? So look, you can read transcripts from any particular county and you know who the bad prosecutors is. You know who do it over and over again. You see what they do. The prosecutor's office know it as well. But again, it shouldn't be win at all costs. When you have a system that's based on how many convictions you get, determines whether you're good or bad, you're gonna always have people that abuse it because they're just trying to get to the conviction. They don't care about fairness. And we talk about, again, what can be done? Accountability. If you don't hold people accountable, you're gonna have abuses. It's just that simple, right? And then how do we hold them accountable? How do we hold them accountable? There should be monitors in criminal trials. Prosecutor has the money. They should have a division that goes around and monitor criminal trials, right? Not just send your gun out there, to hire a gun out there to just, convict people. Send somebody to monitor it and have a system installed where defense counsel finds that there's abuses. They can notify the prosecutor and something will be done about it immediately. We're talking about human beings' lives. So the first step we should do is remember that the person that we are prosecuting is a human being, right? Yes, he may or may not have committed a crime, but the presumption of innocence, they should remember that. Too many times, there's no presumption of innocence that goes in a criminal trial. Prosecutors proceed like the person is guilty and do everything in the world they can to convict him. They make up lies and distort the truths, right? They tell judges, this guy's a bad guy. He's done all this stuff to inflame the passions and emotions of judges to convict people at all costs. So I think we should train them to understand that the people that they're dealing with are human. And Amanda asked questions about a defense counsels and what should be done when they sub in perjury. They should be held accountable as well, right? Anybody that's subbing perjury as an officer of the court should be held accountable. But so many times defense counsels are held accountable and prosecutors are not. So we should at least balance that. If we just balance that, if we hold prosecutors accountable as many times as we hold defense counsels accountable when they sub in perjury, we balance the system out as much as well. And we got to remember that the prosecutors have all the money in the world to make sure that a trial is fair. They have a quasi-judicial capacity, fairness to the courts and candor to the accused. They have that capacity. That is their obligation, not just to convict, but to make sure that trials are conducted in a fair manner. We have to hold them to the oath that they take. And if not, we must remove them. That's our civic duty.
I have nothing to add. This amazing wisdom. I'm so grateful to Derek and Roger for, sharing their wisdom and pointing out, like, we're talking about people, right? So again, this notion that it's like about wins, it's about people's lives, and the stakes are so high that we as a system need to be really, really careful. And I also just wanted to thank people for the really thoughtful questions.
Yes, thank you so much to all the panelists for coming to speak with us today. There are a lot of questions that we couldn't get to today, and so I also want to thank the people who were in attendance, who contributed so thoughtfully to the Q&A portion. After the panel ends, we will circulate contact information for people whose questions we couldn't get to today, in case you wanted to pose them to the panelists at a later time. So yeah, we just want to say thank you again to everybody for putting this together. Thank you to the co-sponsors of this event for making it possible. And yeah, is there anything else you want to add?
No, thank you, everyone, so much. Thank you so much, Mr. Clark, Mr. Hamilton. Really appreciate your voices on this panel. And I think Mr. Clark is saying something that I can't, but it's all good. Yeah, that's it. Thank you so much.
Thanks to everybody for having me. Thanks, Professor. Thanks, moderators. Thanks, Nick, Bina, everyone. Thank you again.
Take care.
Thank you.
Thank
Take
you.
care.
All right.